Hi, Bev. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, April. I am thrilled to be here.
We're
Yeah, we're
excited to
thrilled to
have you.
have you.
Yeah.
This is going to be a really great conversation today. You and I, our audience may not know this, but you and I have been friends for a long time. We go way back. Our paths have crossed for many reasons with kids and other life things, but we have never had the opportunity to work together professionally until now. So I am absolutely thrilled to have you here. And I am thrilled to have you here to talk about today's topic. I know that our listeners are going to be very curious. We are talking about who am I now? And what does that mean? For women in this midlife stage, the question kind of bubbles up, and sometimes it can take us by surprise. We were not expecting that. And for many women in midlife, that means that we're in that middle place that we like to call it at MiDOViA, and that is straddling the what was, right, what we've known, and the I don't know yet. And now what? And I know that our audience is probably shaking their head yes right now. So we're going to bring the conversation to the table. And I'm going to start off by asking you why this is so important for us to talk about. So I'm going to open it up to you, Bev.
Thanks, April. The answer really is because menopause is one of several key places in our life that we actually ask this question: who am I? It starts when we're teenagers, then we pick a vocation, and then we follow that, and then life happens, and some people wind up divorced and asking the question. But we all go through menopause, which hits us in the face when we realize I'm never going to have children again. Whether I want to or not, there is a stark reality of my body is aging. And then there are all the physical things that come with it that remind us that my body is getting older and it's not working the way it used to. And yikes, who am I now that I'm not shuttling children around, perhaps? Or I'm not scheduling myself around somebody else? And it's really the psychological side of menopause that really has hooked me in, and this question of who am I now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. We are in this place where if we've had kids and we've been shuffling them around, like you just mentioned, and our social circles
Mhm.
are really closely related to what our kids have been doing for, how many years? And maybe we're in a career that we've been in to, flex a little bit around our kids' schedules or other people's schedules. And now we find ourselves in this place where we don't have to do that. We're not doing that anymore. We have this roller coaster of emotions, right? I'm really sad because I'm losing something. And I'm also anxious because our bodies are aging and I can't have kids. And maybe there is a sadness there. Maybe there's joy, but there's mixed emotions here. And so we do find ourselves in this place asking, who am I now? And I think, Bev, to your point, there is definitely an emotional piece of this because it can be quite scary as well, not knowing, right? Who am I now?
And who do I want to be?
Right.
Mhm.
Right? It's who am I now? Who was I? I can't remember who I was before because that was too long ago. I'm not that person that I was. Who, where am I headed? It really is this middle ground of questioning, who am I authentically at my core without any of this other stuff? What
Mhm.
am I supposed to be doing? What am I? Who am I? How do I fit into this world around me in a new way?
And Bev, when did you first have that realization like, gosh, I get to reinvent myself and figure out who I am now? What, what was it that caused that aha moment? And then what did you do?
Yeah, Kim, that's a great question. The truth is that I hit menopause when my son was a year old. He was literally my last egg. So he was a year old, and I was deep in the midst of parenting for another 17 years.
Mm.
So it's really been more recently as I've gotten older and I've hit some other milestones that I've been like, oh, what do I want this new season to look like?
Yeah.
And yet, talking with April around this whole menopause issue, realizing a lot of women hit this place way before I did.
Right. Right.
Right. I am not the typical menopause, I'm very postmenopausal, but I did not go through that at the same time that most women did. For me, these questions surfaced later. And then I could look back at some of the conversations I've had with women and my circle and realize, oh, this is really a key component, not just for me who's going through some other stuff, but for women who are hitting this perimenopausal, menopausal area.
Yeah, it's interesting because you often look back and say, oh, okay, that makes sense now. And what should I do about that? Right? I have this experience, or I had this feeling, or I talked about this and it didn't make sense at the time. And now it does. And now it does, and I get to do something with it.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it is.
It
Right?
is. But I think I know, Bev, that you have done a lot of work on yourself and for yourself. And I think the latter is the most important to bring up right now. You have done a lot for yourself, and not in a selfish way, but I think in a very self-care manner. And we're all about radical self-care here at MiDOViA. And so I'd love for you to speak a little bit about that, and what were some of the things, and what are some of the things, because you're still unpacking, who am I now?
Yeah.
What are some of those things that you've done that our audience could do?
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it. I really, one of the biggest things that I recommend for women that I do on a regular basis is just paying attention to what brings me joy, paying attention to what sucks the life out of me. When am I filled? When am I filled with this joy that overflows? I went to a jazz concert 2 weeks ago unexpectedly. Oh my gosh, where has this been my whole life? There was this visceral feeling of the music flowing through, and I went, oh, clearly, I need more of this.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm.
So I really think that paying attention to what brings us life, what doesn't, is a huge piece of it.
Mhm.
Looking even at what Facebook posts do we pay attention to and linger on? Those are clues
Right.
to us about
Mhm.
where are our interests right now? What kind of magazines do we pick up or click on the computer? What kind of things do we read? Paying attention to how we feel in certain situations.
Mhm.
All of those things start giving us clues about who we really are. Um, and then one of the things that I suggest to people that they do is start documenting.
Yeah.
Mm.
Spending 5 minutes a day at the end of the day, putting those noticings into a journal.
Mhm.
Because what happens over time is you can go back and you can see. For me, it tends to be the things that bring me most life are relational. It's when I'm with my girlfriends.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's when I'm taking a walk with somebody. Outside in the sun with the water takes that from here to here. So
Sure.
being outside is one of those things. But when we actually write it down there are a couple of things that happen. One is that the words start to flow out of us that we didn't even know we were going to write down. And
Mhm.
that's our kind of our subconscious just starting to spill out, and we can go, oh, I hadn't thought about that yet.
Mm.
And we can go back and we can see patterns over time. So
Mhm.
paying attention, documenting, those are two of the first things that I do on a regular basis that have helped provide clues. There's some things going forward that I recommend that women do to see what might interest them in terms of hobbies or interests, right? Try new things. I just started a pickleball class 4 weeks ago.
Oh, yay, I
Yeah.
want to do that. I think everybody does pickleball but me.
You know, I know. Yeah.
I just signed up for second pickleball session because
Good,
I
good.
want to move more. I want to exercise more.
Mhm.
But again, for me, if it's relational, I'm more likely to show up. Even if it's
Mhm.
new people that I don't know, I'm more likely to show up. So trying new things.
I think it's
Oh,
interesting
Yeah, go ahead.
because you know, when you're having kids and managing the to and froms or whatever, you don't have a minute to stop and think about how you feel about something or even reflect on, do I like this or not like this? You're just in autopilot to be able to like get through the day a lot of the time. So I appreciate you're like, just stop and observe what's happening around you because and feel those emotions for yourself. You don't have to feel them for anybody else anymore, right? You get to feel them for you, for good or for bad. You get to just feel them for you, right?
absolutely. And Kim, we could take a whole nother podcast about how do we actually make space,
Yeah.
because it actually does require space to
Yeah,
pay attention and notice and reflect on what happened during the day and how did I feel about it.
yeah,
Um, and it's easy in this world to be so busy, even after the kids are gone, right? Maybe work fills up the space, or exercise fills up the space, or the TV or scrolling fills up the space. It's really hard for some people to be by themselves. And
yeah.
this reflective thing is something that requires just it doesn't require a ton of space, but it does require being
You have to be
silent.
purposeful about it.
You have to be intentional,
Yeah,
very intentional.
yeah,
Absolutely, Kim.
And I love what you said too, Bev, about writing it down. I think that pen to paper and getting out of our head does allow us to free flow with our feelings and our ideas and our dreams and really spending that time with ourselves. But I also love coming back to my journals and looking back and reflecting back and not just looking at the patterns, but also celebrating how far maybe I've come. Or sometimes I surprise myself, right? Like you're like, did I write that? Was that me? And I think that's just it fills us. And I think that that can be really good too. To look back and look at progress, but also celebrate successes, celebrate how far we've come, remember that we can get through challenges and dream and know that our dreams can change. We're allowed to change our mind, right?
yeah.
Absolutely. And you bring up a great point, because what I noticed, actually, even just this morning, I was flipping back through my journal and I was like, oh, look at all these things that I wrote down that I was grateful for in the midst of really, really hard times.
Mm,
Reminds me that I can get through really, really hard
Yeah,
times. It
yeah,
will work out. All those unknowns around jobs or relationships or whatever, I can kind of start trusting
mm.
that it worked out before, it will continue to work out, and there is much to be grateful in the midst of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Gratitude is a great thing.
Yeah. And that's huge in those moments where you don't think you can make it through, that to know that you have before. Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly, because we forget. We forget
Yeah.
so easily that gosh, we've been through really hard times before.
Mhm.
And I think particularly in menopause, right? As we're typically reaching an age where not too far down the road, our parents are going to need
Mhm.
taken care of. They're going
Yeah.
to start getting sick. One of our friends is going to go through a divorce. Someone's going to lose a spouse, right?
Mhm.
We're getting to an age where in the not too distant future, all of these hard things are going to happen, right? And that's where we, talk about community. Menopause is a great time to not just collect your friends around what's going on in our bodies in menopause and how does it feel and what are we doing and comparing solutions and whatnot. Although very, very important, it's also a time to go below the surface with our friends and make sure that those connections are secure so that we can hold each other for the years to come.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We hear that a lot.
to have you back on another podcast to talk about friendships because we've had quite the conversation before we hopped on this recording in the weeks leading up to this. So, audience, we will have Bev back to talk about friendships because it's super important during this time in our lives for sure, Bev. So, thank you for bringing that up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And in some ways, and I'll just kind of add a tickler for that future is paying attention to which friendships bring you joy
Mm.
and which people bring you drama.
Mm.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
get to choose. We
yeah,
get to choose.
for sure. For sure. I
I
think
appreciate that about age. I
I love
do.
that about
Right?
age,
I do. I
right?
love that I get to be like, this isn't
Yeah.
no longer serving me.
Yeah, I can
Done.
say no. I can walk
Yeah.
away and I don't
Yeah.
feel guilty, right?
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes we did that before, but there was a little bit of guilt with it. And I don't have that anymore.
Yeah,
So it's a good space to be in.
it is. And who am I now? I'm a woman who can choose her friends.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
can choose who I'm going to spend time with and who I am going to spend less time with.
Right.
We
Who and what I'm going to spend my time doing, where I'm going to spend my time doing, right? And sometimes that's for ourselves.
It has to include ourselves.
Yeah.
It
Hmm.
has to. I remember having a coach tell me when my kids were really young, she was trying to talk me into doing massages every month. And I'm like, I don't have time. I don't have space. I can't. And fast forward 20 years, I'm like, oh, I see what she said. Right?
I know.
She
I
was
just added
right.
that in. Yep.
Yeah, sometimes it takes growing up, doesn't
Yeah.
it, to learn those things? We're all grown up, ladies.
It does. It
It
does.
reminds me, as you were talking, Bev, we've learned in school and as we write papers and we give speeches, they always say begin with the end in mind. And I think that we have been taught that over the years.
Mhm.
And in menopause, in this midlife stage, this middle stage of who am I now? We don't know the ending, and that can be an uncomfortable place. And I think what you're saying, Bev, is to lean into it, discover yourself, and allow this openness and maybe palms open, right? To
Absolutely.
receive everything that is going to come your way and embrace it with joy and find those things that bring you joy.
Absolutely. And we learn to filter what comes our way. What are we going to hold on to that feels like good advice or a good practice for self-care? And what isn't us, right? We just talk about journaling. Some people are draw people.
Hmm.
Well, you know what? That is another way of being able to tap into what's going on inside. For some people, it's more of drawing and painting that lets them access that versus I'm a word person. Okay, great. So let the journaling and words go and let it come up through other creative pieces. As long, our brains all work in different ways, and we get to choose which practices are going to serve and which ones serve other people really well. But man, I just can't pull that one off.
Yeah.
Okay. It's
It's
okay.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I think we often say at MiDOViA, just know that you have choices. Like,
Mhm.
what are the choices that you make? And maybe journaling doesn't work for somebody, but something else comes in. And, but really, like, let's look at what you're grateful for. Let's document what's going on in your head. Don't keep it inside. Figure out ways to get it out and experience those feelings, right? And pay attention. As you said, first off and foremost, pay attention to what's going on. So I appreciate that perspective.
Yeah.
Noticing.
Yeah.
Noticing.
It is noticing. It's noticing what you notice,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
It's noticing our feelings, noticing what our bodies say too, right? Sometimes it's our emotions that we're noticing. Sometimes it's the thoughts in our head. And sometimes our bodies are the first ones to react in the situation. And so being able to work with someone or talk through what's going on in our bodies, we just
Yeah.
have to, we are whole beings. And so all the parts of us matter
Yeah.
and they
When,
all give us clues as
right.
to what's going on.
When April and I were preparing for this podcast and we were talking about the who am I now, I know you had a conversation like, how can I come on and talk about who am I now when I don't know who I am now? Right.
It's so true.
But
Yeah.
I love that.
I love that too. It's like,
I,
wait a minute, how can I talk about who I am now when I'm in this place where I don't know who I am now? And I think it's perfect, right, Kim? It's
yeah.
like, this is perfect
And
because,
will you ever know?
yeah,
And we get to change, right? Like, so just for your listeners who don't know, right? I will just share, right? I lost my husband, a few months ago. And so that is what's been thrown me into this. Who am I now? Who do I want to be going forward? Um, and when I was asked to write the bio, I'm like, oh, I know who I was. I think maybe I know what I'm moving towards. I had this like, yeah, I just kind of was like, how can I write who I am when I am figuring it out? And so that's where I say life events happen for each of us, but we all get to revisit this at different places along the way. And so,
yeah,
and we try on roles, and that's okay. I actually just started an improv class, which
so fun.
is encouraging me to try things out. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I am a planner, Kim. I
Really?
like
Why we're
things.
friends, Bev.
And I'm learning that some things can't be planned. Some things have to be experienced. And then, oh, this feels good. This works. I guess I'll keep walking in this direction.
Right.
I'll do that more. So,
Mhm.
Improv's
and
teaching you
figuring it
yes,
out.
yes, and right.
Mhm. That's
And
exactly it.
laughter and
Yeah.
laughter, right? The
Uh,
joy piece, the community piece. Honestly, Bev, you have unpacked so much in truly this episode with the community and trying things on and trying new things and not being afraid to change your mind and listening and noticing what we notice and journaling, or maybe it's painting, or maybe maybe it's not words, but discover yourself, rediscover yourself, keep rediscovering yourself, and lean into those places in your life that bring you joy.
Yep.
absolutely. And I'll add, noticing those places of resistance,
Mm,
noticing those things, those triggers, they're actually pretty important to dive into as well.
Yeah.
What's behind that?
yeah,
Even
absolutely.
when you don't want to.
I was just gonna say that. Well, and
Especially,
sometimes we don't want to, but we have
Yeah.
to include
We'd
that
have
too,
to.
because that's important. Otherwise, we stuff.
Yeah.
So, well, Bev, we end every one of our episodes with a rapid fire round. So we're gonna hit you with that if you want to have a little bit of fun, so our
bring it
listeners
on.
know you a little bit better. All right. All right, I'll start. How about train, plane, or automobile?
Plain.
All right.
Okay. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
All right. All right. We got one more. How about fiction or nonfiction? Mm. Everyone could see your
Probably
face.
nonfiction. Nonfiction.
Nonfiction. Okay. All right.
Nonfiction. I feel like there's so much to learn about this world and cultures and people and stuff that I know I won't get it all in, but I kind of want to try.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I love
Yeah,
that.
right. A lot.
Okay, our last question that we ask of everybody: what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Great question. When I was pregnant with my first child, and I didn't have her till I was 38, I was at my shower and lamenting the fact, what am I going to do with this child? I know nothing. And this woman said, "You'll figure it out." And I was not happy about that particular sentence. Fast forward 20 years, I kind of like, "You'll figure it out."
Yeah.
And actually, it fits for all sorts of situations.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good
I
one.
actually love that. You'll figure it out.
Figure it
Yes,
out.
ma'am. I am figuring it out.
We're adding that to the book that we'll write on that someday.
Yeah,
But thank
someday,
you for
right?
that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Bev, it has been a delight to have you on the show. I'm so glad that we were able to make this work. I know that you'll be back, and our listeners, side note, we'll probably be doing some events and workshops with Bev to help you unpack this. Who am I now? So look for that in on our website and future correspondence. But until then, until we meet again, go find joy in the journey.
Thanks, Bev. See you soon.
Take care
Thanks,
now.
Kim. Thanks, April.